Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us this full hour of news from around the world. It's Your World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here are the headlines. Russian President Vladimir Putin warns the West Russia will strike if the US begins supplying Ukraine with longer-range missiles. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson to face confidence vote in Parliament over his attendance of those lockdown parties. Plus, an update on the attack on the church in Polwar, Ondo State, as more reactions trail the use of land. Welcome again to the program. Russia is today claiming forces in Ukraine have destroyed industrial buildings of a plant repairing Ukrainian army vehicles in the Kyiv region. The Defense Ministry says another Ukrainian military jet has been downed as well. Also happening today, state media in Russia says one of Moscow's top generals was killed during heavy fighting in the eastern Donbas region. Major General Roman Kutuzov was killed leading an assault on a Ukrainian settlement in the region. It also been commanding troops from the self-declared Donetsk People's Republic. The Russian Defense Ministry is yet to comment on the news. Meanwhile, Ukraine's military intelligence chief, Major General Kirilo Budanyov, says fighting around Severodonetsk now represents the hottest area of the conflict in the country. He claims his forces are gradually ousting Russian troops from the important eastern city, despite what he calls a tenfold advantage of the enemy in artillery.
Russian attacks in Ukraine intensified over the weekend. Here in Bakhmut in Donetsk region, Ukraine soldiers are seen manning their positions in trenches and shelters. They've been under regular fire from Russian troops, and the situation is difficult, according to the soldiers, but they've held their positions. Russia has concentrated its forces in recent weeks on the small eastern industrial city of Severodonetsk, pursuing one of the biggest ground battles of the war in a bid to capture one of the two eastern provinces, Luhansk and Donetsk, it claims on behalf of separatist proxies. After retreating steadily in the city in recent days, Ukraine mounted a counterattack there, which it said took the Russians by surprise. And after recapturing a swath of the city, Ukraine forces are now in control of half of it. A few kilometers south from Severodonetsk in the city of Lysychansk, where Russian shelling has destroyed residential buildings and infrastructure. This video, released by the National Police, showed fire and smoke affecting a damaged building as officers combed the scene in the aftermath of what they said were strikes on the city. The Ukrainian National Police said in a statement on social media that Russian occupying forces shelled the center of the city with artillery. The police said a humanitarian aid distribution center where more than 40 civilians were permanently sheltered was burnt to the ground. President Zelensky was in Lysychansk and Soledar on Sunday after meeting troops in Zaporizhzhia. Same Sunday, Russian forces struck the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, with missiles for the first time in more than a month. Dark smoke could be seen from many miles away after the attack on two outlying districts of Kyiv. Ukraine said the strike hit a rail car repair works, and Russia said it had destroyed tanks sent by Eastern European countries to Ukraine. At least one person was hospitalized, though there were no immediate reports of deaths. The strike was a sudden reminder of war in a capital where normal life has largely returned since Russian forces were driven from its outskirts in March. While Russia promises to strike new targets in Ukraine over the U.S. supplying Ukraine a long-range rocket, it says it is interested in talks with the United States over nuclear arms, but that negotiations are unlikely to take place at this time. Russia also says it would respond to Western deliveries of long-range weapons to Ukraine by pushing back Ukrainian forces further from Russia's border. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said to reporters that the longer the range of weapons that the West supplies, the further they will punch back the line from which neo-Nazis can threaten the Russian Federation. The UK earlier said that it would be sending its first long-range missiles to Ukraine. It comes just a week after the U.S. said it will also be supplying a rocket system to Ukraine. The UK government says the Ukrainian military will be trained on how to use the M270 multiple launch rocket system launchers in the coming weeks. Russia claims it is working to rid Ukraine of Nazis, a claim that has been dismissed by Kyiv and Western nations as baseless.
The VOA's Anna Chernikova joins us now from Kyiv, which we said earlier came under attack on Sunday. Anna, great to see you. Have there been any more attacks in Kyiv since yesterday?
Good evening. No. Today it was a very long, more than 3 hours air raid siren, starting at 10 o'clock in the morning and ending after 1 p.m. Local time. But nothing else was happening today in Kyiv. Yesterday at 6 a.m. local time, there were 4 explosions heard very loud explosions, and they were heard around the city. It was in the left bank of the city of Kyiv, and it was quite shocking for Kyiv citizens because, as you correctly said, kind of normal life is starting to come back to the city of Kyiv, and it's more than a month that no missile strikes were experienced here. So, of course, it was quite a stressful day yesterday.
And the Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned about striking new targets if the U.S. supplies Ukraine with those longer-range rockets, as promised by President Joe Biden last week. How is the Ukrainian government responding to the threat?
There was no official comment specifically on this announcement, but Ukrainian officials and the Ukrainian president in particular were saying a couple of times already that these threats, they're not going to really change the tactic or the strategic partnership of Ukraine with its partners, because Ukraine didn't attack Russia or anything like that. Ukraine didn't start this war. So Ukraine is defending, and it's not only defending itself, it defends basically, the whole Europe. And this is not even under the question that military support is needed and military support is wanted. Saying honestly, it doesn't really seem that any airstrikes or missile attacks could stop Ukrainian government from a partnership with West and with the US in terms of military support and military equipment. Ukraine is waiting for more, and especially for the for the long range systems, rocket systems, and this is something which was already confirmed by the US and today by the UK. So we know that Ukrainian soldiers are already training to use them, and everyone expected them to come to the front line in the next couple of weeks.
And of course, Anna, these rockets are being supplied to Ukraine based on the promise that Ukraine will not use them on Russian targets. But is the Ukrainian government thinking about storage, knowing how much the Russian government or Russian forces have been targeting Ukraine's weapons storage across the country?
It's definitely no information on that. It's secret information. So honestly, no idea where they could be stored. I think that they're going to be different places. Even more, I think that, so as we know that at least 4 rocket launcher systems would be received in the nearest future. And it looks like they will go directly to the front line, so it's not going to be stored anywhere. But of course, we're never going to get this information. The official information out in terms of storages. But what we definitely know, and this was again confirmed by the Kyiv officials and by the Ukrainian government, that the plant in Kyiv that was under the attack yesterday, it was it's rail infrastructure, so it's carriage repair plant. And Russia claims that this was a storage for West equipment. Ukrainian officials assured that it was not, and even invited journalists to have a look to to see that no equipment was there. To be honest, I don't really think this is the best storage that Ukrainian government could use. And there is no information about any of the equipment that was destroyed at the plant. So it looks like it was nothing there. And of course, in terms of storages, it looks that a lot of equipment goes directly to the front line, so not particularly storage in big amounts somewhere in particular place.
Yeah, the front line where President Volodymyr Zelensky has been visiting most recently. He was in Kyiv yesterday, wasn't he? And there have been renewed attacks in Severodonetsk and its surrounding cities. We're learning that there is much bombardment going on in the east of Ukraine. Talk to us about that, Anna.
Severodonetsk remains the most hot point at this moment. Severodonetsk, so situation is changing very fast, and situation is changing in every minute. What we know that over the weekend there were very, very heavy battles going on. We know that at one point Ukrainian forces pushed Russian army away and was controlling half of Severodonetsk. But yesterday, so closer to the evening, situation changed again. And for the moment, we know that Ukrainian forces are controlling industrial part of the city. However, there were a couple of confirmed successful counterattacks by Ukrainian forces. So for the moment, Severodonetsk remains a really heavy battlefield. Very strong defense we can see from the Ukrainian forces. Russian forces do not succeed in proceeding. So basically, for the moment, as what we know again from the latest reports, the forces are remaining at the same positions they were. So during the day, they are just fighting from the position that both sides have, have kind of settled as control. What we also know that President Zelensky yesterday was at Lysychansk, and Lysychansk is basically the next city after Severodonetsk, which would be a target for Russian forces. This city is under Ukrainian control, and the city is located up the hill. So it's in terms of logistics, it's on top, and it's very it's a big advantage for Ukrainian forces for the moment. It's just to understand it, it's just the hottest spot for the moment. Russian forces concentrated all of their resources there, and also what we know that there are much more Russian forces than Ukrainian forces there. But again, according to the Institute of War Studies, Ukrainian forces show incredible defense, and they actually stopped pretty much Russian forces from developing in the area. But again, we have to see, because there is still a high risk that Russian forces would control Severodonetsk. However, even if it happens, it will take them much more time than they expected, and that was expected even last week.
Yeah, and President Zelensky said that the Ukrainian forces have tried to, they have reclaimed some of the territories that have been captured by the Russian forces, and that every chance that they get, the Ukrainian forces are fighting back, trying to hold their own. But he says the situation could become very difficult, Anna, if Russia makes further gains. How much of Severodonetsk really is still under Ukrainian control?
This is true. It's extremely difficult. And also what President Zelensky said, that most important for Ukraine is people. So if land should be, given away, but people saved, and, it's basically what he was saying about Severodonetsk, then probably this tactic would prevail, because as we hear a lot from different military experts, Severodonetsk is a very important spot, but Severodonetsk do not, it's still not that important to lose all your best people at that battlefield. So what it looks for the moment, that it's of course very, very dangerous, and in terms of capturing the Russian forces, Ukrainians would definitely defend it until the very end. But what we can say, well, I cannot really say in percentages, how much of Severodonetsk is under control of Ukrainians and Russians, because as I already said, just two days ago we had confirmation of 50-50, but now situation is different. What I definitely can say is that most of the city is under Russian control for the moment. But again, Ukrainians continue to do counterattack actions and continue to defend.
And thanks again for updating us, and do stay safe in Kyiv.
Thank you very much.
Well, we're hearing more from the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, who spoke earlier to reporters about earlier today. He described an unprecedented move by 3 Eastern European countries to block his plane from traveling to Serbia, adding that he's yet to receive an explanation for their decision. He also says he would instead invite his Serbian counterparts to visit him in Moscow, as the main thing is no one will be able to destroy your relations with Serbia, his words. And this all stems from Bulgaria, North Macedonia and Montenegro closing their airspace to an official plane that would have carried Moscow's top diplomat to Belgrade today. Serbia's Interior Minister Alexander Vulin said he deeply regretted the obstruction of the visit of Mr. Lavrov, whom he describes as a great and proven friend of Serbia. Well, Russian Orthodox Patriarch Kirill has met with the Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko in Minsk today. It's a visit that Mr. Lukashenko is calling a sign of unity and solidarity in the face of evil. Just last week, the European Union gave its final approval to new sanctions against Russia. Despite plans to include the Patriarch on the list, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church managed to escape sanctions after Hungary voiced its opposition to it, denying the EU of the necessary unanimity required to do so. Now, Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Mr. Rafael Grossi, says is working on a mission to the Russian-held Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. He made the comment while speaking to the Board of Governors of the agency in Vienna, saying it is vital that Ukraine be able to continue to fulfill its safeguard obligations unimpeded. International mission was requested by the Ukrainian government via letter asking the IAEA and the UN to intensify their efforts to free the Zaporizhzhia plant from the Russians and return it under full control of Ukraine as soon as possible.
Of course, I must say that whatever we would do at Zaporizhzhia is something that the agency alone is going to be doing when it comes to safeguards or safety or security activities. This is part of our legal relationship with Ukraine. So we cannot invite others, third parties to. But there has been some discussion. I cannot reveal everything because I'm still in the process of consulting with Ukraine and also Russia, that there could be some international presence to add on to the team going there. There are safety standards that may apply to conflict situations, but there are no safety standards under a title war.
There's no new safety standards that have been started since the Ukraine war? Okay.
No,
good.
No. And the problem here is that Iran needs to continue working with us. They have a very important, very ambitious nuclear program, as you know, and now their declarations are in question, because there are loopholes, there are doubts which are relatively important. So I think it's in their own interest to clear this in order to continue. There is no other way, to be honest, there is no other way.
The US and South Korea launched missiles in response to North Korea's missile tests. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. With the Queen's Platinum Jubilee over, it's down to the business of governance in the UK as Prime Minister Boris Johnson today faces a confidence vote determining whether or not he will remain as Prime Minister. Although that vote pertains to Mr. Johnson attending parties at a time the country was under lockdown from the coronavirus pandemic. Appointed Prime Minister in 2019, Mr. Johnson has been undergoing growing pressure, unable to move on from the damaging reports over parties he held in his Downing Street office and residence. Should the Prime Minister lose the vote, he would be removed from office and there would be a leadership contest to decide his replacement. The vote is expected to be held between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. local time. In a searing attack on the once seemingly unassailable Boris Johnson, one loyalist who served as a junior minister in the finance ministry between 2019 and 2021, Jesse Norman, says the Prime Minister staying in power insulted both the electorate and the party. Well, he's one of several Conservative lawmakers who voiced concern over whether Mr. Johnson has lost his authority to govern Britain, which is facing the risk of recession, rising prices, and the strike-inflicted travel chaos in the capital, London. A chairman of the party's 1922 committee that represents rank-and-file Conservative lawmakers wrote in a note, a threshold of 15% of the parliamentary party seeking a vote of no confidence in the leader of the Conservative Party has been exceeded.
Was in the written statement, if it's helpful to you, which is simply to say that the threshold of 15% of the parliamentary party seeking a vote of confidence in the Prime Minister has been passed. Therefore, a vote of confidence will take place within the rules of the 1922 committee. That vote will take place this evening in the House of Commons between 6 and 8 o'clock, and we will announce the result shortly thereafter. There will be arrangements for proxy votes for any colleagues who can't be present in person in Westminster, and we'll notify colleagues of those arrangements in the near future.
UK Chancellor Rishi Sunak is one man who has stood by the Prime Minister throughout the scandal of the lockdown parties, but he's not the only one. Several senior ministers have also voiced their support for Mr. Johnson. The Prime Minister's top cabinet members have tweeted their support for him, with several praising him for ending COVID-19 restrictions and the rollout of vaccines. Among them, Rishi Sunak, as we mentioned before, and there is the Foreign Minister Liz Truss, Health Minister Sajid Javid, and Housing Minister Michael Gove. But there will be no support from Labour leader Keir Starmer, who says the Prime Minister has lost basic trust amongst many Conservative lawmakers.
We've got a Prime Minister trying to cling on to his job. I think most people would say, your job is to help me through the cost of living crisis, and you're not doing it because you're distracted. He tells us that this is the beginning of the end. If you look at the previous examples of no confidence votes, even when Conservative Prime Ministers survive those, and he might survive it tonight, the damage is already done. The boos, I think, reflected a mood across the country. And that's why, amongst other things, I think that's why many Tory MPs feel that basic trust has gone.
Well, the boos Keir Starmer is talking about is that one the Prime Minister received while he attended the service on Friday, a Thanksgiving service for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Let's go now to our London correspondent, Juliana Olaika, for more now. Juliana, there's been a build-up to the vote today, hasn't there? The Prime Minister is carrying on with his duties like every other day. How concerned do you think he is about tonight and what might come out of that?
Good afternoon, Amarachi. Well, I think the Prime Minister is incredibly concerned, and so he should be, because he's battling for his political career. And, you know, win or lose this vote tonight, it may be very difficult for the Prime Minister to come back from this. What we do know is that he has written a 3-page letter to Tory MPs, basically trying to spell out exactly why they shouldn't vote against him today. And I think that's a really difficult task for the Prime Minister, because, of course, as we know in modern day politics, your opponents or your colleagues don't really praise you for your past achievements. They want to look ahead at what you plan to do. And because the Prime Minister has been dogged down in so much Partygate scandal, it's really difficult for anybody within the Conservative Party at the moment to see any light in some of the manifesto pledges that he was going on about pre-pandemic. So we're talking about this levelling up agenda. We're talking about trying to shift to this net zero green strategy, which of course has been upended because of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and now the fact that we may be having to go back to the coal. And so anybody who supports the Prime Minister on the vaccine rollout strategy or getting Brexit done is just not enough. The Prime Minister also just about an hour ago finished a meeting of Tory MPs in Portcullis House, which is a building just right across from the House of Commons. And, the result was mixed, or should I say the reaction. If you are a public ally of the Prime Minister, then most of them were saying that, the Prime Minister's speech was resounding, that he was galvanising support from MPs, trying to say to them, look, this is not a time to try and demolish the government when there is a war in Europe. There is a cost of living crisis, the worst we've seen in 40 years. There are so many issues that need to get done. If you oust me now, then you're literally handing over the baton to the Labour Party. So some Conservative MPs thought that was good, but then others just thought that, Prime Minister Boris Johnson was a mumbling wreck, which he has been in previous times, and that it just isn't enough. So it is going to be difficult. We haven't seen much of the Prime Minister today, but any of the paparazzi shots we have seen of him does show, a man that's worried.
Yeah, and just to your point about, what he said about the change of the baton right in the middle of the race. He did take over right in the middle of Brexit, didn't he? And he's the one that pulled Britain into Brexit eventually. But, well, you mentioned he's been praised, of course, by his top cabinet members for his handling of the pandemic. You say that will not hold. But will it have any impact at all in Parliament today?
Potentially, but it's really hard to say, Amarachi, because again, this is a secret ballot. And as we all know, what your friends say to you in public may not be what they're saying to you behind closed doors. And we all know that Prime Minister Boris Johnson is a very powerful politician. He is part of the fabric of, the British establishment. Some people say people like Prime Minister Boris Johnson are born to be a leader. So I think if you are somebody that would go up against him publicly, you have got to be made of some strong stuff, which is why even when Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of the 1922 committee, informed the Prime Minister on Sunday that the threshold had been reached of 54 MPs, that 15% mark, we had publicly only had heard from about 29 MPs. But since that announcement has come out, we have had more and more MPs saying that they're not going to be voting for him. But is Brexit going to be enough? I think for the Prime Minister, he better hope not, because unfortunately, Brexit has been, I would say, possibly a disaster. And I think most people would agree with that. If you just look at the queues that are taking place across airports, tens of thousands of British travellers are stuck on the European continent because hundreds of flights have been cancelled. Many people are saying Brexit is at the heart of that. We have a huge issue on the island of Ireland and the Northern Ireland Protocol. We've had very senior figures, including President Joe Biden in the White House, saying that, Britain are going way too far in causing trouble and potentially jeopardising the Good Friday Agreement. So that's that. Then let's have a look at the vaccine rollout, which was a success in most parts. Most people can say, yes, Britain were the first in getting out this vaccination. They did absolutely fantastic with the AstraZeneca vaccine. But we still have one of the worst death records in Europe. And again, that is retrospectively. The problem with, I think, that Prime Minister Boris Johnson is going to have is that when we're looking back at his glories, we're looking in the past. Everybody now wants to look into the future. People want a leader that are going to take them forward. And what the rebels are saying is that Prime Minister Boris Johnson is just not the man to do it.
Well, all of this stems now from the issue of the lockdown passes and his attendance in Downing Street, number 10 Downing Street, as well in other parts of the UK. After this vote, whichever way it goes, will these issues still remain in Parliament? Will they still be talking about it? Will his job still hang in the balance after now?
Yeah, this is not going away anytime soon. Amarachi, just for some context, let's just remind our viewers that in April, not too long ago, Prime Minister Boris Johnson became the first Prime Minister to receive a fine from the Metropolitan Police. That is pretty serious. After the Metropolitan Police investigation came to a close, once Sue Gray, the veteran civil servant, released her report, some of the reading was pretty shocking. You know, we're talking about civil servants within Whitehall and Downing Street, you know, scrapping with security guards. There was vomit on the floor from partying so much. Emails sent out saying, bring your own booze. You know, it was pretty depraving. And some people say he has completely disgraced the office of the Prime Minister. And then again, we just heard from Sir Keir Starmer, didn't we? He is also under investigation by the Metropolitan Police. And some are saying that it is likely that he would get a fine, which means the Labour leader would have to stick to his promise and resign. So I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. According to some rebels, they believe that they have 150 MPs that are willing to vote against the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister needs to be saved by 180. So it is going to be close. And again, a lot of political pundits have been going back in the past, bringing up other times when Tory leaders have been in positions such as this. Sir Ian Duncan Smith, Sir John Major, Theresa May, they all fell at the sword, even though they won the vote. So whatever way the vote goes today, I think Prime Minister Boris Johnson is badly wounded.
Wow, what an analysis, Juliana. The vote comes after a really long, fun-filled weekend, an impressionable one for Britain in honour of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. How concerned are Britons right now about the political future of their governments, knowing that, you know, they still find solace and stability in the monarchy?
I think that's a really good point. And it's such a contrast between celebrating Her Majesty's 70 years on the throne, you know, never complain, never explain, just, you know, her entire tenure was about duty. And then, you know, anytime you flipped to pictures of Boris Johnson, you know, he seemed to be sulking, as you quite rightly said in your intro there. You know, there were a chorus of boos when him and his wife, Carrie Simons, were entering into St. Paul's Cathedral on Friday, which was pretty embarrassing. I think people in Britain are sick to their back teeth. They've just absolutely had enough of all this squabbling within Parliament, particularly at a time when, you know, wages are not going as far as they used to. Mental health is a really big issue here. So many children were left out in the cold during the pandemic when they were unable to study. And now we've got two of the most senior political figures in the country being accused of breaking lockdown laws by drinking alcohol at a time when people couldn't see their loved ones. I think, you know, there's no doubt about it that people do like Boris Johnson. They like him. They think he's fun. He has a few gaffes. But I think the shine has definitely worn off. You know, it's more than having a gaffe. It's more than being somebody who is the joke and the heart and soul of the party. You want somebody that can lead. And, you know, YouGov have done a flash poll, and according to them, 60% of the British public want Boris Johnson out. Also, as well, the Conservative Party, on their homepage, I believe they did a poll of about 1,000 Conservative Party voters, and more than 80% said it's time for Prime Minister Boris Johnson to go. We had by-elections a couple of weeks ago. The Tories didn't do so well there. So, yeah, I think it's pretty clear that the public have had enough. Obviously, we can't use social media, can we? Because we know that social media does distort the truth. But I think most people have absolutely had enough. You know, they want to move on from this chapter. And for some people, the only way we can move on from this is if there is going to be a new Prime Minister.
Well, tonight we'll decide, and lawmakers will be taking the future of Britain in their hands. Juliana, thank you again.
Thanks,
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has heralded a deepening relationship with close neighbour Indonesia, pledging stronger cooperation on security during his first bilateral foreign visit today. Mr. Albanese also pledged increased cooperation on areas like trade and climate change, signalling his interest in attending the G20 summit in November, which will be chaired by Indonesia. The remarks come amid rising tension between China and the United States in the Indo-Pacific, with Albanese labelling an incident when a Chinese fighter aircraft dangerously intercepted an Australian military surveillance plane in the South China Sea region in May as an act of aggression.
On a practical measure, in terms of why I'll be attending, is that I'm focused on sitting with President Widodo, not sitting with President Putin. It is in Australia's interest to have good relations with our Indonesian friends. The Indonesian presidency of the G20 is an important moment for Indonesia. There's a lot of work being done. Arrangements for the meeting will be settled in due course, and we discuss that, and it's important we work through the understandable concerns of President Putin's attendance. We've also made the public comments, so they haven't been just quiet. Diplomacy in this case have been strong because we regard the actions of China in this area as being an act of aggression and a dangerous act against against the Australian Air Force, which was conducting aerial surveillance in accordance with international norms and in accordance with practice that's been long observed.
South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol says North Korea's missile and nuclear weapons programs have reached a level where they pose a threat to regional peace and world peace. Yoon made the comment at a Memorial Day event a day after North Korea launched a barrage of short-range ballistic missiles in probably its largest single test. North Korea has conducted a flurry of missile launches this year, from hypersonic weapons to tests of its largest intercontinental ballistic missiles for the first time in nearly 5 years. Meanwhile, South Korea and the United States both fired 8 surface-to-surface missiles earlier today off South Korea's east coast after North Korea launched a barrage of short-range ballistic missiles earlier in the day. South Korea's state leader said the action is a demonstration of the capability and readiness to carry out precision strikes against the source of North Korea's missile launches or the command and support centers. On morning rush hour, traffic resumed today in Beijing, the Chinese capital, after authorities further relaxed COVID-19 curbs, including allowing indoor dining as China's capital steadily returns to normal with infections falling. Residents cycled on the roads alongside heavy traffic as a normal work resumed and traffic bans were lifted on Monday. In most areas of Beijing, at least, restaurants, which have been restricted to takeaway since early May, opened for business. Dining services in most parts of the capital also resumed. Beijing and commercial hub Shanghai have been returning to normal in recent days after 2 months of painful lockdowns to crush outbreaks of the Omicron variant. The Chinese capital reported 5 new local symptomatic cases on Sunday, compared with 16 a day earlier, and 1 new local asymptomatic case versus 3 the previous day, according to the local government. So Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is promising to provide 30 million doses of the coronavirus vaccine to fellow African countries in coordination with the African Union. He made the announcement at the first Pan-African Health Conference held in the capital, Cairo. Around 400 health officials, along with medical companies working in more than 100 countries, are attending the event. President al-Sisi says although Egypt has limited resources like other African countries, it's ready to cooperate with all of them. Still ahead on the program. This rare Stradivari violin is heading for Christie's, where it could fetch as much as $11 million. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. Nigeria's Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has today visited Owo, Ondo State, in the aftermath of the shooting at St. Francis Catholic Church. It was taken around the scene of the attack by Governor Rotimi Akeredolu and clergy of the church, where many people lost their lives on Sunday morning. According to the Vice President, those behind the attack are not Nigerians. He says there is no excuse for such an attack and vowed on behalf of the government that the perpetrators be dealt with. And it's been a day after the heinous killing of over 30 persons at the Catholic Church in Owo. Residents of the street where the church is located are still in mourning. Although there's some level of calm around the town, security agents are on the ground, deployed by the State Police Command to beef up security in the area. Leaders of the Christian Association of Nigeria in Owo local government area have been staging a peaceful protest, however, following a prayer session within the church premises, seeking God's intervention.
It's the day after the shooting at St. Francis Catholic Church in Owo, Ondo State. Residents are out on the streets close to the church, dumbfounded about the horrific events of the previous day. The perpetrators broke the peace of an otherwise peaceful Owo kingdom as the people mourned their dead. No one saw this coming, not even the governor of the state, Rotimi Akeredolu, who cut short his trip to Abuja for the APC convention to visit the scene. He says nothing can compare to the level of this attack.
What you have in America is a child's play to what has happened there. From information from the security agencies, these are the most dastardly act that can never happen in any society.
Although there's some level of calm around the town, security has been beefed up in the area to give the people a sense of reassurance of their safety. Meanwhile, leaders of the Christian Association of Nigeria in our local government area have been staging a peaceful protest after a prayer session within the church premises, seeking for God's intervention.
This incessant attack, most especially to the Church of God, to the Christian body, the peaceful communities in our nation, it should not continue. And we are peace-loving religious group, and because of our disposition, I think they are taking us for granted. We want the international community to come in and wade in before it goes out of hand.
Inside the church, there are telltale signs of the shooting that led to the death of men, women, the elderly, and children.
I heard, I would say, a noise, like loud noise. Within me, I was even thinking maybe somebody fell, maybe, a kind of commotion behind. So it was when I looked from the altar, then I saw from the sanctuary, I saw one of us. And then who could have seen from inside the church? Yes, and so he quickly locked the door. And so from that moment, locking the door, then the message got to me on the sanctuary that unknown gunmen, like armed, they are around.
I was in the church. I just heard a gunshot along the gate. Then I came out. I stood here, and I saw the man came in with face cap, long, like he's taller than me, with gun. The man now shoot gun beside where I did. They don't not come to me. Maybe Christ cover if he didn't see me. I'm looking at him. He now switch another one. I said, who's this foolish man shooting gun here? He repeated another one, and I fall inside. And I locked that. I tell my people, things don't change you. For me to open my eyes through this window here to penetrate, the man apart the other side. And I enter through the other door. As he enter, I was looking, I was still shooting.
Also commiserating with the Catholic Church is the chief imam of our kingdom, who prays for peace.
How can you imagine somebody dressing properly, they coming to church to worship Almighty Allah, to worship God, and then meet its Waterloo? This is very, very unprecedented. I never expected this. I know one thing for sure. God never sleeps. The perpetrators of this dastard action will be caught. God will expose them.
Preliminary investigation reveals that the assailants approached the church as the service was about to end and began shooting from outside the church, while others, numbering about 4, shot directly into the church. Meanwhile, the Commissioner of Police has ordered forensic investigation into the attack to ascertain the actual or remote causes and for immediate arrest of the assailants.
Police in India say the death toll has risen to 26 after a bus fell into a gorge in the northern state of Uttarakhand with 30 people on board. 4 of those rescued are in critical condition, according to officials. A bus which was travelling from the district of Panna in the central state of Madhya Pradesh crashed on Sunday. In Uttarakhand district, another police official said the bus was en route to Yamunotri, referring to the source of the river Yamuna, that is at a pilgrimage site. Shivraj Singh, the chief minister of Madhya Pradesh, visited the injured in hospital following their rescue. And in the United States, the mayor of Chattanooga, Tennessee, says the city would urgently pursue previously planned gun safety measures after 3 people died as a result of a shooting in the city earlier on Sunday morning. 3 people were killed, 14 others suffered gunshot wounds after shooting near a bar in Chattanooga. And authorities say 2 people died from gunshot wounds. 1 person died from injuries after being struck by a vehicle while fleeing the scene. Mayor Tim Kelly told reporters on Sunday the city has some fairly extensive plans to address gun violence. Those are all progressing and they'll progress with even more urgency now.
My focus right now.
Well, as we end the program, how much does a regular violin cost? And how much do you think a rare violin would cost? I'm talking rare. 1679 violin heading for the auction. That's Christie's next month. And those in the know say the sale is expected to be huge.
The violin in question is a rare 1679 violin made by a renowned Italian craftsman, Antonio Stradivari, and is headed for auction. It could fetch up to $11 million.
All around the violin. I expect a lot of interest for such an instrument because it's so rare that it comes out of a museum. When can you touch a violin like this and own it? It's incredible. And if you love classical music or beautiful pieces by a household name, Stradivari, in superb condition with this golden ground, it's incredible how it looks, then it's the one to try to get.
Stradivari kept the instrument for 55 years, selling it in 1734 for £40 to Samuel Hillier of Wanburn, England. But at the auction, it is expected to fetch between £6 to £9 million, that's between $7 to $11 million.
Stradivari's violins these days cost between $8 and $20 million, and this one is quite nicely and attractively estimated at £6 to £9 million. So I think it's just a very, very nice piece to own in your collection of sculptures, violins, paintings, etc.
Stradivari's violin are known for the exquisite craftsmanship.
With these great instruments, you kind of get out exactly what you put in. They're incredibly responsive to every single micro movement. So if you're not used to playing these instruments at first, it can be, it's often, these kind of violins are often compared to sports cars. You know, you have to firstly learn how to drive them, but then once you learn how to maneuver, then it's incredibly rewarding. So it's been incredibly interesting and exciting for me to begin learning how to find the sound on this instrument.
Some say the very best Stradivari have attributed the unique superiorities of the instrument's tree growth during the 1600s, during a time of global low temperatures, during the Little Ice Age associated with unusually low solar activity of the modern minimum, during which cooler temperatures throughout Europe are believed to have caused stunted and slowed tree growth, resulting in unusually dense wood.
I feel incredibly honoured, firstly, to be playing an instrument that's firstly so beautiful outside, and also the sound as well.
It's absolutely priceless. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.